Hello guys, today's video will be about best practices and patterns that I use in Jupyter notebooks. I will share them with you, explain you and show you how you can use them and how you will benefit from them. All of them are quite simple, but they will help you to improve certain aspects of how you work with the Jupyter notebooks. And in order to keep track of all the things that I want to share with you, I've created a Miro board. So I have things here, and generally these patterns and best practices will be connected with notebook structure and with formatting the outputs and post-processing the outputs of your notebook. There will be more advices later that I want to share with you related to code or related to how you work with data, but they will be in separate videos. So keep track on them. And before moving forward to the advices themselves, I want to say a couple of words about the motivation, like why this is helpful and why should you pay attention to that at all. So generally, Jupyter notebooks are quite easy and you can just open them and start writing code in them. And if you do this like just for one time and move everything to trash tomorrow, then don't worry about how you structure the notebooks. But if you want to either reuse the notebook, or you share this notebook with other team members, or you want to have multiple notebooks and easily remember what's in one, what's in another, then you need some practices to follow in a way that how engineers do. Engineers usually have coding guidelines, some best practices that they embed in their coding style, and these practices help them to share knowledge across the team and improve the reusability and readability of their code. So there are several advices similar to coding guidelines for engineers that you can follow in Jupyter that will reduce the number in mistakes of mistakes in how you in the code that you write and in the data interpretation, speed up like how you work with your tools and how you work with tools of other team members. They help you to hand over the notebooks to other team members, and basically notebooks become more reusable if you do these things. So that's the motivation. And let's look in particular examples and particular advices that I want to share with you. And first advice is that notebook should be linearly executable, which means that if you run it from scratch, it should run till beginning to the end. And basically you can check that by doing the following things. So you restart the notebook and then just run all cells in sequence and just check that everything is executed correctly. An error may occur if, for example, when you were developing the notebook, you initialize some variable here, but then you used it above. And after restart, you won't be able to reproduce that. And basically, it's a very bad pattern to follow because it will be really hard for you to understand later how you executed that. And other team member won't be able to reproduce it at all. So don't follow that. And easy way to check that you don't initialize some variable below is just to check that your notebook is executed linearly. Plus, you will check that there are no errors in the data, that you don't use variables that were removed afterwards, etc., etc. So if notebook has executed correctly, then great. Just check it once you have finished some piece of work on the notebook. Just check that it is executed linearly. Then the notebook should follow one main goal, and it's actually a big problem because when we write notebooks during data analysis or some data preparation, we have a temptation to put everything in this like sequential line of cells, and it's okay when you just move forward in the investigation, but when you reach some point where you transfer this notebook to somebody, or you just clean the pieces in your notebook, you should think like, are all the pieces in this notebook serving one main goal, or I have multiple different goals in there? For example, if this notebook serves the goal of visualization of the price, it's okay if I will visualize price not only as a graph but as a table. But it's not okay if I will have a piece of data or features extraction from a price in this very notebook, because it's a different goal. So try to keep these things in different notebooks so that they will be clearer to understand and they will be easier to reuse. If notebook is shorter and it serves one main goal, you will spend less time on maintenance, and basically it will be either completely reusable or it will require just a couple adjustments to be reusable. But if you have many things in the notebook, then it will be really hard to reuse it because it will fail at some moment. The moment may be not relevant to your goal at all, but it will take time for you to skip these pieces that are not needed. So it's also my advice to follow. Then I recommend you to have headers to separate blocks. Like usually I have several constant headers, like imports constant and common functions go in one block. Then I have a block, the next one is like custom, for example, like for first step to do, there might be several blocks of custom logic. And when you write these blocks, you may notice by blocks headers that they don't serve one main goal. So that's how these two like patterns have a synergy in each other. So once you start to structure your code by headers, you will be able to recognize that your notebook is too big already and there are several different main goals in there. So you can just reuse the same schema of headers that I use. You can use your own, but it will definitely help you to use the same schema across different notebooks. Then I recommend you to use collapsible headers. Some Jupyter installations already have them, like in Collab you have them, and in several versions of Jupyter you have this pre-installed. If you don't have these collapsible headers, and basically, yeah, collapsible headers allow you to hide things at once, which is handy if you want to focus on one particular group and just ignore the others, so it will help you. And if you don't have this feature, just Google how to install it. It's super easy. So we will see how to do that. So basically you will need to install an extension in your Jupyter and just install it. So it's not hard to do. Okay, so next thing, yeah, and I will actually provided a header to the discussion where it was discussed. Yeah. So you can use this one to see. So you will need to install extensions and just call a couple of lines of bash code to do that. Okay, so next one. Yeah, so I recommend you to pay a specific attention to how you structure constants. So I usually put constants in one cell, I mean global constants in one cell, and I separate them into two pieces. So one is configurable constants. Basically, that's it contains things that you can modify later to customize the notebook behavior. So for example, it may be some dates, some configuration of the data that you want to query. In this case, it's a list of symbols that I want to query price for. And next block contains some calculated constants. They are basically not configured directly. They reuse values from configurable constants. I keep them here also, but separate them so that people who reuse the notebook can see, okay, so what is configurable? I can adjust these things. And I write constants with uppercase so that I can easily distinguish between local variables or small scope variables and global constants. And yeah, then I just reuse them in the code. So you can follow this pattern and it will help you. Usually people do things like they provide a global constant here and it's used across like all the code below. It's worse actually because it will be harder than to find this piece where the constant is defined. It's better to put this constant in some first cell in the top of the notebook. Sometimes you may have a local constant, like local for 1 or 2 cells. It's okay to keep it here and to name it with lowercase. But if the constant is global, then keep it separately. Okay, so it's done. And then, yeah, you may notice that if you will create a new notebook, then you will have like empty cells here, and you will need to copy this header, copy this constants template, and copy for something else that may be default to you. Then you can just have a template notebook that you will use to copy from it, for example, like this one. So just provide header, some default imports, some default commands here, and yeah, just to reuse it then. And following of the patterns that I have shown you will cost you nothing if you just have this in the template, so you won't need to type it every time when you create a new notebook. So just duplicate this one and start from this. Okay, so these were advices connected with notebook structure, and then I have several devices related to outputs. And yeah, I will get back to this structure notebook and show you a graph. So often people are lazy to format the axis properly, and sometimes they also don't provide a title to a graph, because when you work with the notebook, it's quite clear to you what it presents. So you have created the code recently, and you just you know what data you put into x-axis, what data is in y-axis, right? But if you will look at this graph tomorrow, probably you will forget what was here and what was here. In case of dates, it's quite clear, but for y-axis, it's not that obvious, right? And if you will share this graph with somebody, then it will be even less clear. What do you show here, right? So that's why my advice to you is always label the axis and provide a title. It will cost you like a couple minutes of time, but it will improve readability of your graphs in the future. Because I faced many cases when a team member shares a graph with somebody else or just puts it on Miro board or in the documentation, thinking that everything is clear, but it's not clear, right? So just do this always. It will not cost much time, but you will benefit from it a lot. So that's what a better graph look like. So I have some labels here. Okay, then if you have a problem with presenting different scale lines, like here, for example, I have prices for Intel company here, and price change of Intel is not really visible. Is actually here I have a price drop by 5%, but it's not visible just because the graph has a scale for other companies, and yeah, these just bigger numbers like make it harder to read what's happening with smaller numbers. But as an investor, for example, you might be interested in noticing the 5% drop here, because drop here is actually smaller. It's just like, yeah, well, not probably smaller, but more visible. Here probably the same percentage drop, but it's more visible here than here. And in these cases, when you have different scale for lines, you can use logarithmic scale of the axis, which will, yeah, make these changes more noticeable. Oh, actually, it's not 5%, but 10% drop. Sorry, like even more than 10% drop here. And here we have, yeah, like probably 3% or so. Yeah. So now we see that this drop is relatively more significant than this one. And you may have like one line with the scale of from 1 to 10 and another line with a scale from 1 million to 10 million. And then if you will put them on one graph, they will be not readable. So you will either need to use two y-axis, or you can use logarithmic scale so that you will present them on one graph. But in this case, it will be great to highlight that this axis has a specific logarithmic scale, so that people will be able to read it without a mistake. Okay. Then an interesting thing, an interesting finding for me was that when you interpret the graph and you look at the legend, sometimes it's quite confusing that you have blue line at the top here, while blue line goes second in the on the graph, and green line goes first here and third in the legend. So it's not super critical, but hardens understanding to some extent. And what you can do is you can just reorder the data so that legend will be ordered in accordance to how lines are going. And it's also quite easy to do. So in this case, I can just do this thing. Just select an average price per symbol from the data, and then I can reorder symbols according to their average price. And I do this descending by putting a reverse through here. And then I iterate not by like constant symbols, but these ordered symbols. And let me show you what it will look like. So yeah, now I have Microsoft at the top here and here, Apple here and here, and then Google, and then Intel company. So it simplifies reading of the graph, and you could just easily improve readability by doing this thing. Okay. Then one more thing that you can do is to make pandas tables visualizations copyable. So by default we display tables like that, like widgets, and they are okay to interpret here, but they are hard to copy, and usually we do screenshots of them, right, like that. But using tabulate package, this one, you can print tables as tags. I have a separate video for that, so you can look into that for details, but generally it looks like that. You can just do the same thing by saying to markdown and printing it, and you will have a table pretty formatted, and then you can copy it and paste wherever you want as a text. Okay, so it's done. Then yeah, one more optimization that you can do with plots. When you download the plot, you can reduce its size once it's downloaded. So you download it, and usually we then put it in documentation or on Miro or send somewhere. But if you want to optimize the size of that, you can use Magic Mogrify for that. I have a separate video for images optimization. We'll put it in the description. So if you're interested, you can also do that, so that your images will look the same, but will take like 5 times, 10 times less space, and it will be important and helpful if you have lots of images to share somewhere, for example on Miro. Okay, and the last thing that I will show you is that there is a way of how you can copy information from a plotly graph. So often you may be interested in some data, and you may want to copy something from this pop-up, but you cannot do that. But what you can do is you can configure plotly graph in a way that it will print what you want on a click, like that. So you click on the graph and it prints information here. So it can be done by adding a couple lines of code to your plotly graph, and I also have a separate video for that. We'll put it in the description. So if you're interested, you can also reuse this practice. So it will be helpful for copying data from a graph or for data labeling. So hope you will use it and enjoy. And yeah, we have covered the entire agenda in this list. I will prepare a couple more videos for notebooks best practices from other aspects, like from coding perspective, from working with data perspective, and we'll share them with you soon. So keep track of what is posted. And for now, thank you and see you soon.